as Cellomoji, and I'm here to talk about tips and tools to help you on your cello journey. Hi, and welcome to episode number 2 of Cellomoji Chats. I thought this would be a really good episode to talk about commonly asked questions when you are learning to play the cello or starting out or even considering playing the cello. There are just so many questions that sometimes I'm sure people just wished they had someone they could ask them to before they even started diving in, because maybe some of these questions are deterring to you, and maybe you may decide that learning the cello may not be for you. I don't know. Hopefully not. I think there are very few instances where I would say maybe cello would not be a good fit, but most of the time I feel like cello is a great fit for lots of people of all ages and abilities and shapes and sizes and all of that involved. So let's just dive into it. One of the most common questions I get, number one here, is, am I too old? Now, I just want to quickly squash this myth that you have to learn to play an instrument when you are really, really young. And if you don't start when you're really young, then there's no possible chance for you to ever learn to play an instrument. It's not only cello, but any instrument. You can start to learn it whenever you feel ready to start to learn it. I have taught students as young as 4, and I have taught students as old as in their 70s. And both situations, they come with challenges, no question. And the challenges can be different based off of how old you are. But that's okay because, every person is unique and every person will have their own unique issues to work through. So question number 1, am I too old? No, you are not too old. I would say if you have a lot of pain while sitting down, that might prove to be a challenge because you have to be able to sit while you're playing cello and be able to sit for a little bit of time. And sometimes that can be difficult for people, or if, they have bad backs or something, that can be a challenge as well. So definitely consider that. Number 2. What are the string names on the cello, and how are they similar or different than the other string instruments in the string family? So cello has 4 strings. They are the A string, which is the highest, and then D, and then G, and then a low C string, which would be basically the fattest string on the cello. Now, these are different than violin, which has the high E string, an A string, D string, and G string. It does not have a low C string. So that range up there is higher. Now the viola actually has the same named strings, A, D, G, and C. But their range is a little bit higher. If you want to think of octaves, if you want to think of octaves on the cello range is on a lower octave than the viola. And if you just want to think about it as the instrument shapes themselves, cello is much bigger than a violin or a viola, so it goes much deeper in sound. And as for the double bass is different because those strings are tuned in fourths, so they are not like the cello strings at all. However, there are some crossovers in terms of how you hold how you might be holding your bow, or how you might get your left hand to kind of feel comfortable when it's in playing position. But the strings are different. Number 3, what is the shaky thing that everyone is doing? So it might be hard to picture, but you look at any professional cello player, or a string player for that matter, and you'll often see that their left hand is kind of shaking around. And that is what we call vibrato. So this is kind of a more advanced technique of playing, one that I usually don't start to introduce too early because it is meant to be for those of the string players who don't struggle with trying to find pitch, because you don't want to start really doing vibrato if you can't find good intonation on your instrument. But the shaky thing is called vibrato, and it is a little bit different across the instruments. And the technique of teaching it, I mean, that can be a whole podcast in itself, I guess you can say. But just as a very general overview, the shaking thing is called vibrato. Number 4, do I have to move around to be expressive? Now, this is something that has come up, which is kind of funny because I didn't think it would be so much of a thing, but now with the rampant social media and, people putting up videos of themselves playing their instruments, and, even for myself sometimes, you'll often see that players can be super expressive looking. They make these like faces and they kind of arch their back a little bit and they move around. And let me just be the first to say that a lot of that is just for show. It is putting on a performance. It is trying to entertain the audience. Do I believe that the performer is, interested in what they're playing? Of course. I do think that there are, some moments where, for myself, I can feel like super into the music and might, shift around a little bit. But am I going to look like I'm having kind of conniptions on stage or, swaying back and forth as if I'm on a rocky boat on the sea? Probably not. And one interesting thing, which someone once mentioned, a professional cellist, a mentor once said to me is like, if you really look at a performer, they could be all expressive and moving around on the slow, long notes. But if you ever noticed, if they're about to play or are playing a super complex section where their fingers are flying around the cello and it's, super, super complex and it is live recorded or live, showing, not like a pre-recorded thing, then you'll notice that all the cello players are super still. You'll notice that they'll actually keep things still so that their left hand can be the one that's doing all of the motion. And I think this is really important to note that sometimes you really need that solid, still grounding in order to produce a really good sound. And let's just be really quick to address things like two cellos or, I love these guys, the piano guys even. You have to understand that what they are producing is a music video. And just like pop stars who make music videos, when they are making the video, they are inevitably doing a version of lip syncing. I'm not saying that they're not playing their instruments during the video, but is it an exact perfect replica of what you're hearing over the speakers? Probably not. Because that kind of sound quality, you got to go into a recording studio and you got to sit down and make the perfect track and make sure it's always in tune and in time and all of this. And I'm not saying that they're not doing that there, but you have to understand some of the extra stuff that you see them doing is just that. It's just extra. It doesn't mean that if you don't do that, you can't have some kind of musical contribution. I know plenty of very, very well-known cello players who are super still when they play. And that is their MO. They just want to be still while they are playing and just let the music speak for itself. Number 5, are the bow grips the same across the instruments? So in this case, this is something really, really important to know. No, they are not the same. Any violin and viola teacher who is trying to teach cello, if they show the same bow grip, that is the incorrect bow grip. The big difference that you'll see is that the pinky for the violin and viola players will sit on top of the stick, whereas for cello players, it should be sitting on the frog. So it should be alongside the other fingers. It should not be in a different position than the fingers. Now, bass players, they have 2 different bow holds they can choose from, the French hold and the German hold. And based off of who their teacher is or what they prefer, they can have a bow hold that looks similar to a cello bow hold, or they could have one that looks completely different. So cello bow holds in themselves are a little bit unique. And that pinky, does it make a difference if it's sitting on top of the bow or on the side of the bow? And it really does. It really makes a big difference on how much you can control your bow. So make sure that you are making sure that your pinky is in the correct part of the bow. And if you want some, extra free advice, here's a free plug here. I have a free bow hold course, which I will link to down below in the show notes so that you can click through it and get my take on how I teach bow holds to all of my students. Number 6, do I need a teacher in order to learn to play the cello? Now, this is a little bit of a tricky one because I am a teacher. So, of course, technically I should say, yes, you need a teacher to learn to play the cello. But let me just preface this by saying, I think in the beginning, it is super important to have good guidance on how to play the cello. I feel like for a lot of people, once you get past a certain point, it is a little bit of figuring out, notes and rhythms and how to play them, and that's great. But if the essential foundation of playing cello, if your setup is completely off or just, watching a whole bunch of YouTubes of different people playing, then you are just taking a guess that you are doing the right thing. And let's just put it this way, the older you are, the more likely that certain pains or injuries or things could happen if you are holding the cello incorrectly or trying to play the cello incorrectly. Things may happen where you're like, I don't understand why it's making this sound or what is going on. And having that one-on-one interaction with a teacher can really just help, tweak some things. And do you need a lesson every week? Perhaps not. But to say that you can learn to play the cello solely off of YouTube or, taking random advice from people, it's really hard to do. And I would not recommend it because you're just setting yourself up for bad habits, and really bad habits take a really long time to get rid of. And I feel like just even having a couple lessons from a legit cello teacher will really, really help you. Now, I'm not even talking about an orchestra teacher who plays a different instrument as their main instrument and then they're trying to teach cello. I'm talking about an actual cello player who was trained in cello, took many years, and is accomplished in their own right in playing cello. You will find that even just those 1 or 2 lessons is going to really, really help. So I say yes. Having a teacher is always going to be helpful. Do you need a teacher forever? It may be unpopular, opinion on it, but maybe not. But it kind of also depends on what your goal is. What is your plan and how far do you want to take cello? And I think that is actually kind of more important to also consider. Okay, number 7. What clef does cello have to interact with? And this one, we actually have to interact with 3 different clefs. So we have bass clef, tenor clef, and treble clef. We have to have the 3 clefs because our range of how much we play goes from pretty low to pretty high. So I think that as annoying as it is, we kind of need to have those 3 clefs. And who knows, maybe it was partly because editors or composers didn't want to write all of those ledger lines to indicate how high or how low a note would go. So yeah, there is that. Now, bass clef and treble clef, those are basically piano clefs. So if you play piano, it's definitely helpful because you're probably already knowing how to read these clefs. And tenor clef, it can be a little bit tricky, but there are some tricks to learn how to read it a little bit easier. And it is one clef that is kind of confusing because viola players read a similar clef. Now, the clef looks exactly the same, but where it is on the staff is completely different. So don't confuse it, or don't let your viola friend tell you how to play the note because inevitably they'll be reading it incorrectly. So tenor clef is a different clef read than the viola. So this leads into number 8. does piano knowledge help to play the cello? Now, I actually started when I was really, really young playing the piano because my mom is a pianist. And so, of course, we're babies and we're just tinkering around. So sure, I played piano for quite a bit until we realized that, having my mom as a teacher is probably not the best because we just kept arguing a lot. But I did learn a lot from her, and, I wouldn't be the musician I am today without her. That's for sure. Thanks, Mom. And knowing how to read piano and the piano clefs, treble clef and bass clef, made my life so much easier when I was learning to play the cello. Knowing how to play piano doesn't help you play the cello. It just helps you absorb the music a lot easier. So reading the music will be a lot easier. And then figuring out how to play it on the cello will be a little bit easier too, because you won't be struggling to do two things at once. And it seems kind of like a minor thing, but it really does make a difference if you know exactly what note you're trying to play and you can actually read it on the music as well. All right, let's go over 2 more questions on this one, and stay tuned for future commonly asked questions, FAQs, on learning to play the cello. So number 9, where can I get a cello? Now, this one is, and now that Amazon is just such a distributor of, shipping all the things, Amazon is definitely a place that people try to get cellos from. But I would say that is probably the one place that I would recommend to never get an instrument from, because you don't really know what you're getting. I mean, if I had no access to any music store at all and I needed to order online, I would actually go order from a licensed instrument dealer. So Shar Music is one place. Southwest Strings is another one. Johnson Instruments, I believe, is another one. And even, if you're really into like electric instruments, the electric violin shop for sure. I mean, they know their instruments and they explain it and they talk through the benefits of each instrument that you could get. And these are the things where you have to go and get options. I mean, you don't want to just randomly get something off of Amazon because, like I said, you don't know what you're getting. And if the deal seems too good to be true, it probably is not a good cello. Now, say you are in a major city, then no doubt there are lots of music stores in the area. And even if you went to just like a random music store, they can definitely direct you to a place where you can get a good cello for your money within your budget, even if they don't have it in their store. So where can you get a cello? Anywhere but Amazon. I would definitely check your local music stores first. You can ask around to people who may have been playing other instruments and see where they got their instruments, and you can go from there. But definitely stay away from Amazon. As much as I love Amazon, this is the one thing I would not get from there. And I did have a student who got an Amazon cello, and let me say, it sounded terrible. And there was so many squeaks and squawks that came out of it because it's just a poorly made, like cheap cello, I don't know, made out of plywood for all I know. And the student was very good. It's not like the student was like a bad or super beginner player. He was actually a pretty good player, but it's just hard to get a good sound out of a really cheap, bad instrument. Okay, so number 10, last one for today. Where can I get music? Now, this one is, again, with the internet, this is so much easier to get a whole variety of different music, which is awesome. And I am really grateful because it makes my life a lot easier too for myself when I need music or when students of mine need music. So in general, one of the big sites that I go to is called sheetmusicplus.com. So music is also often called sheet music. So it's sheetmusicplus.com. And I put up my own arrangements of music on there. And there's also pretty much any book you can imagine. is on there, and it's great. Highly recommend. You can search for specific songs, specific books, compilation books. It's great. Another place, if you're looking for pop songs or Broadway songs or pretty much strictly non-classical songs, would be to go to musicnotes.com. Musicnotes.com is all of a digital website where you will basically purchase the music, and then you can download it and print it, or you can have the app and it will just be on your app there as well, and you can look on it on, say, like an iPad or even your computer. That is a great site for anything that is not classical. Now, keep in mind, those things, though, are often arrangements from someone who wrote it out themselves. So they could have some interesting interpretations of music. Sometimes it could be in a completely different key. You just have to be a little bit careful about which ones you want to pick. Or if you don't care, then, just go for it. I would definitely preview it. You can kind of take a look at it and see if it's at your level before you purchase it. Now, some classical music things you can actually find on imslp.org. Now, this one is a site that it's a free website that people upload public domain music, classical music, for people to just download and use on themselves. And this can be super helpful for a lot of different reasons. But again, this is not necessarily a monitored website. So you don't know exactly what you're getting. It could be, a great arrangement. It could be something that you bought off the store and then someone uploaded. Or it could be some really old manuscript that, I don't know, could be non-legible. You don't quite know what you're getting. But again, it's free, so there is that benefit as well. If you are in the beginner cello stages, it's probably not really the site for you. It's definitely for intermediate advanced players. That is, or when you're trying to do chamber music, that's definitely more a site for that. Beginners, I would usually direct them to either get it off of sheetmusicplus.com or Amazon. Amazon these days, again, is really great. And one of the things is sometimes it could be on the website or the warehouse Sheet Music Plus, but you can order it through Amazon and do it that way too. So Amazon would definitely be my next big pick. You can search for a lot of different pieces of music and often get a good deal. And hey, if you have Prime, you can sometimes get 2-day shipping, even better. For things like specialty music, so for example, the Piano Guys, I love their music. I've really become a fan of it, I must say. And their sheet music you can purchase directly off of their website. I mean, you can order it through Amazon as well. But again, remember that anything when you're going through a second party and you're not getting it direct from them, they probably are losing a bit of money. And I am all for supporting the artist. So if you can, and it doesn't, hinder you too much, I would order it directly from the artist. So if there is Piano Guys, you can order from them. If you wanted to learn Lindsay Sterling music, order direct from her store. What else? I mean, Two Cellos, they came out with music as well. But again, you can buy it off of their store. You can buy it off of their website. You can buy it off of Amazon. It's kind of, you have to choose and see where you can get it. There are definitely free other sites like MuseScore. I know that some people get music off of there, but again, it's just someone uploading their own version of it, so you don't exactly know what you're getting. So I would take that with a grain of salt. The ones that I've seen off of there, I haven't been too crazy about their arrangements, to be honest. So I usually don't recommend MuseScore, but I do want to acknowledge that it is out there, and people definitely do that. And go there and get music. And then finally, this is not to discredit any of those music websites. Johnson Strings, Shar Music, even the publishers themselves like Pender's Music International or Schott, SCHOTT, Schott Music. You can get things directly from Peter's Edition music. You can definitely get off of their website. There's all sorts of different websites that you can now get music from. And some websites have it and some don't. Some have it international and some don't. So for some of those more obscure websites, you're usually looking for something specific. A lot of the time, though, if you are kind of beginner, intermediate, most of the music you could possibly want to play would actually be on any of the sites I mentioned before. So I will definitely leave these links in the show notes so you can be sure to check them out and see if any of the music you want to play is on these sites. All right, so there were 10 commonly asked questions about learning to play the cello or starting to learn to play the cello or even thinking about it. These are definitely questions that I get all the time as a teacher. I hope that you found these helpful. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow me on wherever you're listening to this podcast. I would really appreciate it. I appreciate you just taking the time to listen to this episode. And definitely let me know if there are some questions you are really curious about, but I haven't addressed. I'm sure I will come out with a future commonly asked question episode. But for now, we'll just leave it here. Until next time, guys, cello on.